And we are live in the middle of Shaw disappearing into the background, blending into the background.
Whoops. No more alive.
While we're doing this, we're going to embrace technical difficulties right now. Everybody just let us know if, besides the obvious stuff, if there's any technical issues in terms of the audio, if you can't hear us before we start, that would be helpful since I can't actually hear myself, so it's good to know. And hopefully everybody has been having a good week. How's everybody? It's the first week of September?
It is.
Second
I
weekend.
think so.
Right.
Second weekend. First, full week.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the first football Sunday.
Oh, okay. Are you watching? Actually, did it already happen? Like, did a game already happen, or is it more games?
Most of the games have happened. Now there's a few games.
Okay, you can clearly tell I don't keep up with football.
It's probably, you're not missing much, but extra stress.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
I think there are a lot of anime sports fans as well. Like usually people separate the two, but I think a lot of people are into sports. Like Jack's into sports. There's so many people into sports. Like just a big thing for anime fans for some reason. I don't know why, but it's quite cool.
It is really funny. I think there's you have the anime fans who are into sports, and then there's some crossover, and then you have some who are like, I will not touch sports with a 10-foot pole. I do not want sports.
But then they watch Haikyuu and their whole world changes.
Then they understand.
Haikyuu, still don't watch sports. Keep it separate. Typical weeb.
That's a good call, though.
Let's see. Chat has not said anything. I guess we sound okay, mostly. I'm gonna do this one thing before we officially start. And Shaw already did it. All right, great.
I did it.
Awesome. Let's see. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead. Hi, and welcome to the Just Weebs podcast. I'm your host, Onimaru, and I'm here with Shocking, as we are
guys.
Every week. And this week we've brought on a special guest, Jamal from the GetIntheMecha podcast over here on YouTube as well. And we brought him on we've actually checked out his content, and we thought it was really cool, really insightful stuff he has on his podcast, which is a solo podcast that he kind of does by himself. I think it's weekly, or is it now? It's monthly. It's
it should be weekly. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's more I should be doing this regularly, but it kind of turned into a vibe schedule. So something like that.
Yeah. We know how
we know all about that.
Keep a weekly schedule. So
we know about schedules and keeping up with them sometimes.
Yeah. And it was actually Shaw that showed me Jamal's content and was like, oh, you should check him out. It's really interesting. And I kind of have watched a few episodes, and we were like, we need to get him on. We need to kind of talk to him and just have a conversation about the overall craft of animation.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
no problem. I'm happy to be here as a regular listener as well. I feel like I'm finally sitting at the table for the table that I'm always listening to all the time. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Oh, that's an honor. Yay.
Yeah, we just found out Jamal listens to us, so we're like, oh, that's great.
We're like, oh my God.
Well, we listen to you, so.
Yeah. So I was going to start by asking kind of how did you get into anime, and then kind of go from there? Because I was kind of wondering if you we can get into it later, but I had a line of questions that I was curious about.
Yeah, so I kind of got into anime through manga, so just sort of the classic pipeline. started just reading Naruto, and then like started watching Naruto because I just I didn't know it had a show, and then I found out it had a show. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start watching the show now. Got through that, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. You watch a few more battle shonens. Like I think the second anime I think I remember watching was like Blue Exorcist, and then after that, I just kind of started watching more and more stuff, getting more and more down the rabbit hole, and then eventually, I would say like the real like animation arc began in like 2020 almost. Like COVID and pandemic, you just kind of have a lot of time on your hands to like get into the weeds or something, and then I kind of just started looking at like, okay, who was actually making the shows that I really like, and then it just kind of went from there, and now I kind of can't like unattach myself from it. So yeah, that's kind of like the story, I guess.
How do you feel like it's transformed your way of viewing anime from how you initially started to like now kind of grasping this whole other side of it? Do you feel like it's changed how you engage with it? Do you feel like you can still like make that separation of like, I'm just gonna watch an anime for just pure entertainment, or is it always like you're always on and kind of thinking about it that way now?
Right. Yeah, I do get that question a lot because weirdly enough, I think the two kind of come together in the sense that I don't. I still like primarily watch anime because I like it. Like if there's a show that I like, I'm just gonna watch it anyway, regardless of like who is on it, who's making it, or whatever. But it's usually I think it's more that I go into it thinking I'm just more conscious of the fact that like there are people behind it, and there are people that are coming up with like the ideas, and if there are like certain parts that I really like, then that's what I'll try and look up. But I'm still it changes the way you engage with it in the sense that like I think you're just more conscious of the fact that those choices that you're seeing, regardless what they are, like someone was like in a writer's room who thought those things up. Someone wrote like the really bad jokes or the really good jokes. There was someone that like drew XYZ character, and so like that's kind of how I think of it. And then with shows that like I really really like, then I'm much more turned on. I'm like checking weekly lists of who was on whatever because I just really want to like just get into it because it's just so interesting.
Do you feel like that's made it harder for you to like absolutely dislike an anime, like to kind of not like to hate it now that you know like there's humans behind this, they worked on this?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think you just kind of have to find that line between I think because of the fact that they're humans on it, you should like critique it honestly, as opposed it like of course I'm not going to like ruin a whole anime and just like rubbish it and say that it's like so awful and everyone did it like such a bad job. But it's more the fact that I think if you really do care about the fact that like that people you'll speak about it honestly and like faithfully. But I do understand that weird feeling though, like especially online when you have like the people that worked on the show following you. You also don't want to like you don't just want to completely like speak badly about their show, so you just kind of have to find that middle ground, I guess. And yeah.
Do you have like a bunch of like animators and creators like following you?
Yeah, actually.
That's so much pressure. Oh my gosh.
Like I think the one that I'm most proud of, he's not actually have many followers, but the composer for Hunter x Hunter 2011,
Let's
which is no one
go.
follows me, and like even though he doesn't tweet very much, but I didn't want to like completely freak him out and say like, yeah, you make the best music ever, by the way. But like it's quite nice sometimes, but it comes with like I suppose a bit of a downside.
Yeah, that's really cool though. That's cool. That's a cool claim to fame. And that's kind of almost more nerve-wracking if they don't tweet often, because then you're like, what if like the one time they come on Twitter, they see something?
Yeah,
that's awesome. And that's a lot better than my friend. He is like the #1 fan of the manga. What's it called? Oshi no the one that's getting an anime adaptation
Right,
by
yeah.
he's like the #1 fan and like probably the person I think of if someone brings it up, and he got blocked by the mangaka
Oh my
on
God.
Twitter.
No way.
And I think she unblocked him, but he like posted a leak or something, and then they just
Ooh.
like blocked him, and so he was really sad for a day. So I think you're safe of that happening no matter what,
Yeah,
but that's
I hope.
yeah, I think you'll be good. But that's
Yeah,
really
especially like I feel like most of your stuff, I could be wrong, I haven't seen everything, but like you mostly talk about the visuals, so you're not really talking about the composing. So if you do get to that point, then don't
Yeah.
worry.
Yeah, luckily I don't really know like enough about music to say like it's bad. It sounds good, so I just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
leave it at that. Like cool instruments, and yeah, just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's like such a relatable pipeline of like I started reading, watching, and now like I know who's behind it, and I can kind of like pick up certain decision making. I think I've had that too, where I had like a kind of an epiphany where I'm like, okay, every single shot is a conscious decision, and I think that's like the case with like most media and cinema. But there's something really specific about animation that they had like as much control as humanly possible to like make things in a certain way that like just clicked in my mind where I'm like, okay, all of this is so intentional. There's so much thought being put into this. Like it's kind of almost like a way to pay attention even more. But it was it's like it's a cool epiphany when you're like, wow, like all of this is intentional. There's no accidental shot or like, it's not like you hear a lot of people call things like unnecessary, like something is an unnecessary decision. And it's like, no, like all of this is in the creator's mind, like very much intentional and necessary.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's improved my appreciation for particularly what you can maybe call realist films. So stuff like maybe like Your Name or like some of the Hosoda movies or whatever, or even some like the Ghibli movies, Jinro, etc. It's just the fact that like a character stands up in a very specific way that someone like chose to make the character like bend their knees in a certain way and like get up and add the weight and all that, and that's kind of like really fascinating to think of in a way that I probably like wouldn't have thought of like a few years ago.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I know of two. I could guess of 3 of your favorites, but what are your like top 5 anime if you had to pick?
Top 5 anime. That's hard because like I think usually I kind of have a grasp on it, but like usually the last 2 change all the time. Or like, no, the other 3 change, but I'd say like number 1 probably be Evangelion. That's kind of like a hands down. It's kind of in the name. And then second place would probably be the Monogatari series.
Okay, nice.
That's that like what was a big one for me. Kind of changed a lot of the way I view things. Thirdly, this is where it gets hard. I'm going to say. Wait, can I include movies in this?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, if I say movies, then I'd probably say.
Evangelion.
Probably not. But I would maybe say that like if I did have Evangelion on first, but also I haven't even like finished the rebuilds, which is like really bad. But
no.
I'd probably say like Jinro, maybe.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah, I watched it not too long ago, but like I really liked that one. Fourth, I'd probably say like Ping Pong the animation.
Yes.
I think.
Okay, solid.
Yes.
Yeah, and then finally, this is also probably gonna like change a lot, but I'd probably say I'd probably say Psychic Reserve.
Nice.
Which
that's awesome.
Most people don't associate with me a lot. Like I think some people say, wait, what? That doesn't really move much. But I just found that like so funny to the point at which I just couldn't like not enjoy it.
Yeah, those are always the funny ones. Okay, I thought you would definitely have Sunny Boy and Hike Monogatari. Is it called?
Right. Yeah.
I totally thought those would be in it, but I can totally. you know, you got like historic favorites and then like new things that are fun to talk about. So
Yeah, like I still really love those. Like those
Mhm.
are two of my favorite anime, but I don't know if I'd
Yeah.
put them like in the top five just because of like how like important those are. But to be fair, a lot of the things in the top five, like I really need to rewatch it anyway because like I don't know, I might like just hate ping pong next time I watch it, although I probably won't. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So are the ones in your top five? I can imagine those are anime that you both fully enjoy and also appreciate. You know, like on a technical perspective, but you also like Psyche K. You said you like really just find it funny and you just enjoy.
Yeah, I'd say that's kind of with although you like of course you don't really need like an elaborate reason to like something, but
Yeah.
I'd say that that is kind of why I like them anyway with
Mhm.
almost anything. And even if it's not like, oh, I know like everyone that worked on every episode, I still like appreciate it for what it does because what it does is really good anyway. And so like I think that sort of natural appreciation comes out regardless if you do like something, because if you like something you probably appreciate how it's done in the first place. So yeah, like I'd say those two things are kind of interlinked.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I think in your video for animation direction changes everything, or your that one episode you did like not too
Yeah,
long
yeah.
ago, you mentioned Hakenden as an example, and you say like how you
Oh
don't really
yeah.
like it, you just like but you
uh,
appreciate it, like you know, because what it's done and like the animation direction in it. So I feel like once you start to, and you could disagree with me here, like once you start to see more of what's behind the surface, like in terms of the production and kind of see that aspect of it, it becomes harder to like fully like not like something. Like you at least find some angle to which you appreciate it on, and it's usually like a technical perspective or something like that.
yeah, but you did a really deep cut there because I didn't even remember that myself. Like, um, I'd say yeah, I do agree. I think it's the with her canon specifically, it's more that I just this gonna sound maybe a bit mean, but like I just find it really boring. It's not like it's not a bad show in the sense that like the writing is poor or it's not animated well, because both those are really good, but I just don't feel like it's something that interests me that much. And so yeah, that's kind of where the point came from, I guess, that like I appreciate how much effort is put into it and what it's trying to do, but it's just not something that really resonates with me, or the message just doesn't really hit me, even though I know what it's doing, I guess, is like, at least from a technical standard, it's like I guess we could call above average, or it's doing like a lot, but I just don't really it's not, it doesn't really meet what I'm
Yeah.
into personally, which I think is kind of a few things really, and that's yeah, that's usually when I'm more towards like not really liking something, but it's not really because it's like it's not doing anything good, it's just because I just don't really see the vision personally.
Yeah.
I kind of love that though when you can praise something in a series or movie that's not necessarily like a favorite, because like maybe like most of it doesn't click with you, but this one certain element does really click and stand out. And I always appreciate when people kind of like do a shout out on something like that, because it's like it really hones in on the like way in which that one element is really excelling, you know, because
Right,
it
yeah.
because like we can always kind of like praise our favorites all the time, and we generally do, but sometimes it's cool to say like I've seen this one series and it's not a favorite, but this one thing really made an impact on me, you know. So I think it's kind of cool to switch it up. I respect
Yeah,
that.
I think sometimes maybe this is just an anime discourse thing, maybe it's just a film discourse thing, but it's like if something isn't the best, it's just like not good enough. But it's like
Yeah,
there's so many things that are like there's much more nuance to it, I think. Like there's some things that are
yeah,
really good that maybe aren't like your favorite thing ever, but yeah, they're
yeah,
really good still, and there's nothing wrong with something being really good. And
yeah,
in the same respect, like there's some things that maybe like yeah, they're not the best thing ever. Doesn't mean they're also like the worst thing ever. And like you can't like this. It's just I don't know.
exactly.
I think maybe I don't know if it's a social media thing particularly, but I think people's perception is very like black and white,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
isn't really good for something that's like very subjective like film.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's kind of all of the above. I think it's a social media thing, and then definitely like a film and definitely like anime thing where it's like it's either a 1 or a 10 to some people, and it's like
Yeah.
there are 8 other numbers that could, you know, describe how you feel about something. And I've seen that a lot too, where people are kind of like they have that attitude of like, well, if you don't like it, why are you watching it? And I've had a lot of times where like I'll start something and it doesn't seem like I'll like it, and I'll finish it and I'll still not like it, but I'll come away with a lot more positives and negatives that kind of like tell me a lot more about like my preferences and what I'm looking for in other series. So it's like a net positive experience, even if I don't necessarily like the thing that much.
Yeah. And it's good that you guys also brought up social media and discourse, because the part of the reason also I was bringing it up is because like a lot of times, let's say, because people get so negative on something, on social media, in discourse, whatever, you kind of either feel compelled not to watch it, or you're like, well, I need to watch it myself to really experience it. And then you do watch it and you're like, well, okay, I still didn't like it, but it wasn't as bad as they said, and I kind of get what it was trying to do. But sometimes, because you want to bring up its merits, people assume that you like it. So it's kind of hard to draw that distinction of like, no, it still didn't resonate with me, but it's not as bad because I kind of get what it was going for, and what it did. It's just like people, like you said, make it like too black and white.
Yeah, I just think, well, I think one of the best ways to really expand your horizons, I suppose, and really get to grips with what you like is also just to watch loads of different things, regardless of whether you like them or not. Just watch loads of different things. I'm not saying also don't get into like the rat race of just watching stuff just to watch it, because that is also very dangerous too, and it's not a very good use of your time. But if you want to try something, I don't think you should be very hesitant to try it. Just go for it, because regardless of whether it's good or bad, I think you're going to learn something from it at least, even if it isn't like, it doesn't need to be like, this profound thing that you learn from it, but you've learned more about what you're into, and that will probably make a series or film maybe like a few weeks down the line much better, because you now know why you like this even more.
Yeah, 100%. I guess kind of switching gears, but not necessarily switching gears. I was wondering, how would you describe your channel? Because I have a way that I would describe it that is hopefully complimentary, but I was wondering just like, how would you, how do you envision it? And like, what's kind of like your goal through GetIntheMecha, which is a great name, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, to be fair, the reason why I called it GetIntheMecha rather than Getting the Robot was partially because there's like there previously was a YouTube channel called Getting the Robot, but then also there was also a podcast that came out like 2 weeks before I was about to like start my own called Getting the Robot, and so I just had to like switch it, and that kind of annoyed me, but now I'm like kind of happy with it. But onto your question, I think that the goal of the channel really is just to try, well, like mostly it's kind of just me talking about like the really niche things that I like, or at least the very particular things that I like. That's like the underlying motive that like I don't tell people, that I'm just kind of like just throwing stuff at a board that and just seeing what sticks. But in terms of like the quote unquote real thing, it's the external message is really just to try, and I think I don't want to sound like I'm trying to educate people, because that's never the goal. Like, I'm not trying to like teach people like what it's all about, but more so just trying to, I guess, expand how we view anime, at least beyond just like, is the writing good or bad, or is this series good or bad, but more talking about like the small things that maybe change the experience, things that make it a more interesting thing to watch, and just things to look out for and pay more attention to. So yeah, I just try to like highlight those things. Whether people like really stick with it is another question, but like I try to at least point out some smaller elements that make things perhaps more enjoyable or impact the experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've always found that the people who have been the most informative and like best researched also always say, I don't want to say that I'm educating people, but then they end up kind of doing it in the process. So I think that's really telling in a good way. But I was kind of thinking of like your channel, like when I think of it, I'm like, this is kind of the content that I think everyone who has watched a lot of anime like wants to see being discussed, because it's kind of like the pipeline we talk about with like you start out, and then once you start becoming conscious of the people behind the anime you like, and you start like actually kind of going down the rabbit hole of creators, seeing like who is influenced by what what works they've done, like that you might not even know of, like the small like roles they played on other series. I think people really start getting a craving for like talking about the intricacies and like what is like animation direction or like visual storytelling, and they want people to be conscious of that. So I think your channel is like great for people who are really craving that kind of discussion. And I think like the more people watch of anime and the more informed they get, it's kind of like the perfect way for like, here you go, this is kind of a lot of the conversations you want to be having like happening in one place.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was. I think the reason for it was because I also like was kind of craving that discussion, and so like I just, I found somewhere to discuss it, and maybe not with like a person, but at least with a mic. Yeah, like I just when I find interest in something, I just feel like it's fun to share it with everyone else and see if like am I crazy here? Am I thinking like the right thing? And so yeah, like I think that's really like the motive behind it.
Yeah.
Sorry. So now that you brought that up, why a solo podcast? Like as opposed to making like making like just edited, like because your podcasts are also edited, so like just a more focused video. It's more of like just a kind of a more free form. It does have structure, but like a podcast.
Okay, for the solo podcast, partly in terms of it being solo, I just had no one to do it with. So yeah, like kind of a sad reason. But,
practicality.
Yeah. And then also I guess it was just at the time easier to record a podcast just because of like also like hardware and stuff like that, like recording a video, editing a video. Just wasn't something and also I'm like, as you can probably tell from this discussion, like I don't really speak in like straight sentences. Like I'll say something and then like I'll move over to the other thing and the other thing. And so I think with the podcast, it kind of lets me do that and just be a bit more free, as opposed to having things like strictly like down and scripting things. I'm just not really like a big fan of writing like a whole script for something. And so yeah, just kind of like I like the vibes really.
Yeah, it's got the vibes.
Yeah, actually, like I noticed that I think that format does it works for you because like it does genuinely come across in the videos that I did watch that it is like an exploration, and like you're kind of just studying this thing or kind of really just trying to inform your impressions kind of based on your observations, but at the end of the day you also end up saying like, I'm not an expert and this is kind of what I think right now. It could change, I could be wrong, but this is kind of what I'm going to put out there as what I think. And like, it really kind of makes it feel like, like as we're learning from you, but we're also kind of like, know like there's more to explore, if I worded it correctly. I also really like, and I think Shaw brought this up before, that you give examples, like you like break things down, like you go the extra mile to not just say, this term and like kind of like an overarching, like just a summarized definition. You then go and follow up with a specific example, maybe 2 or 3, and then go to like word, like to explain that, like what exactly like that is like an anime. And I like that in your recent videos now you're like showing it visually, like there was the water one. I think it was the what was that called?
It was just like water and anime,
visual
I think.
storytelling.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I like the part where you were like talking about the Great Passage, which I've never watched, but I was just
Great
I
show,
just
by the way.
yeah. And then you showed the scene of the guy kind of like staring across the ocean, like looking at the, I guess, the windmill or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like a Ferris wheel, something like that.
That Ferris wheel. And then you kind of like drew lines over it to kind of showcase like the distance, or I don't know. I just thought that was really cool and like interactive, that you actually like bringing it on screen and like breaking it down. So I think that's very valuable because like there are people like myself that like have the craving to know more about this stuff, but like a lot of people and a lot of content that I've seen, they refer to the thing like as if you already kind of know about it, or like they don't really go like into the nitty gritty. And a lot of times you just want examples. It's like to really wrap your head around it. So I like that you do that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's what the podcast format in general, like even with your podcast, like comes really in handy in the sense that like you can kind of build ideas. So you can talk about something and like, oh, we spoke about why X animator is doing really good things. And then you can say, refer back to this episode and so on. It kind of stacks upon itself, as opposed to like with YouTube and a lot of like YouTube film discourse. I think people often kind of just like get to the points. And I think sometimes you want to like build the ideas and the points and so on. So like I kind of really like that, I guess. And also just like generally a podcast what I really like, especially like anime podcasts like your podcast. Like there's some really nice running jokes. Like the March comes in like a lion rod is like my favorite moment in the entire thing. It was like I just had to like pause the podcast and like process that all because I didn't know how someone could like dislike that show so much.
We know some people. We know some people who they really have opinions.
Yeah.
I still need to watch it.
I think the podcast will end, like that'll be the season
The
finale.
final episode
is like you watching March comes in like a lion and finally forming an opinion on it.
Yeah, Weebs come in like a lion.
Yeah.
That was just like an incredible moment. But like, you can't really, I don't say you can't have that in a video, but like it doesn't have that same effect really. And yeah, like I think that's where like podcasts I can't speak, like specifically for film like works like really well.
Yeah, and I can tell with yours like when it does have that cool like stream of consciousness feeling to it that like I think you do a good job of like articulating yourself, like, but I love how I think Onimaru said it too, like it's like, oh, it's like here's this cool thing I like, but I also found it like similar here or it's different here, but it's also really cool. Because I know if I was like just kind of doing it like solo podcast, I'd sound so unhinged. I would just be going off to like things like I would be so unorganized, but like in my head it makes sense. So like I would just be going in all directions. I still kind of do that, but at least like Onimaru's here, so I look a bit less crazy. So it's like a conversation and not just like
you wouldn't be unhinged. You'd have like 7 Excel sheets just open at once. And
none of them are updated. They're just 7 sheets and they've all been started and none of them have been finished.
You guys are so like organized when it comes to like watching anime. They're like when you have the spreadsheets and you have mosaic and all that. I can't do that at all. Like I have a pretty messy mail list, but you know, like you share like on Twitter, you have like the scores on the thread and everything. I can't like format my anime watching like this.
No, that's like probably better. I think it gets a bit somehow getting organized feels unhinged because it's just like mine gets really bad because I have a spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of everything I finished this year, which is actually kind of helpful because I don't remember anything like beyond a month. So I'm looking back at something from February and I'm like, oh, I did something in February. But then I have like the airing spreadsheet of like shows I've seen that have aired. And it's getting a bit in the weeds. Like I enjoy doing it, but it's getting a bit much. So I need to chill a bit.
One thing I did want to bring up, bringing it back to like, I guess, animation as a craft, is specifically animation direction. I know you did the podcast on it. I watched it. You had good examples. But like for someone sort of like starting out that really can't pick up on animation direction like themselves, like how would you define like animation direction or anime direction being distinct from like being able to tell like it's not the writing and it's not maybe the idiosyncrasies of an animator, it's like specifically the direction?
I suppose I define it as like the sort of the philosophy of the drawings and the art in that episode, or more specifically, like what is the unifying approach behind all the I guess like visual things in the episode. It's definitely something that's like much harder to pick up on, I suppose, just because of the fact that one, I think because a lot of anime discourse does lean towards viewing visuals as like a secondary thing as opposed to like a primary thing, and also just the fact that not all animation direction, I suppose, is very distinct, and like that's probably one of the main limitations of that video, I guess. It's just the fact that, you know, you kind of have to really talk about it and its real impact, you kind of have to talk about more distinct examples, as you know, even though animation direction is like a thing in the anime pipeline that's always being done, it's just the fact that it's not always used to really like bring out the messages and ideas. A lot of the time it's very much for like quality control. And so I think animation direction is very much about like the visual approach to a lot of like the drawings and like what those are trying to say and how they like bring out what we're watching specifically.
Okay,
that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think Yuasa is like a great example for like that you brought up, because it's like not everyone, a lot of people can tell like the Yuasa philosophy and his animation style. So like when he comes on as like a guest anime director for an episode, you can definitely tell it's him. So it's very distinctive. So I think that works out really well.
Is Yuasa what you would call a form distorter, Jamal?
That's also a very deep cut.
No, so okay.
Onimura gets like the PhD in like every guest, and he's like in the weeds, and it's got like the terms. I'm
a very in the weeds guy. No, I actually I really like that episode. I think it might be my favorite. The form in anime podcast that you did. That one, I don't know. As soon as you started saying like your theory about like, okay, there are form conformists and there are form distorters, I'm like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the shit right here.
Yeah,
I got so excited.
I do come up with like kind of weird terms like on the fly just to justify my thinking, but
it makes sense though.
No, yeah, so cool.
Sorry. Like in the case of like Yuasa, I'd say it's more that Yuasa doesn't really, he's not like kind of in that framing, he doesn't really he's not very particular about I guess consistency. He's very much about like idiosyncrasy and so on, and so the form of one character usually looks very, or at least one character design often looks very different throughout the series, but that also has its own benefits, I suppose. And I think that's something that I like really appreciate about animation. It's when I think there's a lot of focus on things being consistent all the time, because I think people often view inconsistency as bad, which sometimes it can be, honestly. We see it when shows melt and they become very inconsistent. But also when it's done intentionally, I think inconsistency can be really good, because it allows you to sort of bring out the messages even more. It's kind of like adding extra, a special spice on a particular episode. You bring out the flavors of the certain dish you're presenting, because you change the lines, or you change just how things are drawn in that episode.
And just, I guess for context for listeners, in that episode that Jamal had, he just basically broke down that there are form conformists, which are directors or animators that, really, I think it was animators, that stick to making the characters look more realistic to their core, so they're more relatable. And then the form distorters that kind of break the rules of the body composition to sort of prioritize showing evoking emotion and stuff like that. And Yuasa is a good example of that for reference.
Yeah, I think in that, looking back at it, I probably wouldn't have maybe used those terms, in the sense that I think some people would usually refer to those sorts of animators or directors as, I guess, realists in that sense. So you have people well, at least some of the most famous realists, people like Toshiyuki Inoue, Hiroyuki Akira, they're very much about, and they even often describe themselves as being quite conservative, in the sense that they're very, they stick to human forms and what's real for human movement. But again, you have other directors and animators that kind of, they veer away from that, but it always depends on the context as well, because sometimes people differ depending on the show or the context it's in.
Yeah.
But I think the way you described it is a good starting point, even if you refine it later on, because it led to I think the part that I liked is that you broke it down to, these are almost visual shortcuts that to getting to understand what the director writers, the message they're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And that thought was just very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's why people should need to think more about animation in terms of its, I guess, what it has to say, because often, and this really annoys me, is when people say that a show is almost carried by animation, in the sense that the show, the writing is hollow, but the animation is good, and they have a point, but it's more the fact that I think you're assuming that the animation has nothing to say. And the animation is kind of just there to exist, as opposed to the writing. But I think it's about time we viewed animation as storytelling in itself, which is part of the story. That it's not to say that it's the writing, but it's telling its own story next to the writing, which is also part of that story too. Yeah, so I think those things kind of need to be like reconciled a bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because I was wondering, what do you think about the shows that, I feel like we see the same or a similar kind of Demon Slayer clip going trending every week, and it'll either be because someone is saying like, "Oh, this animation is best, it's not getting topped," but then you get the counter wave of people saying, "This doesn't actually look that good. Like people need to stop praising it so much," and it's kind of like you're in a weird middle ground, at least for me, of like not agreeing or disagreeing with either, but like to your point of saying like people need to kind of step away from like something is carried by animation. What do you think of in that case? Like, what do you think it is that makes a Demon Slayer clip so popular for people, even if many people are saying like the writing isn't as good and the animation is good? Like, what's the magic behind that?
Yeah. Well, like I'm kind of in the middle of both of those takes where like I don't really agree with either in the sense that I do, because often people try to make it out that these things aren't like thought out, as we
Yeah.
mentioned before, almost that like people are just throwing effects on the screen, which they're really not.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like I think there's also more to animation than like really large effects and
Yeah.
so on, or like really large effects showcases, which are good, but they're not everything. I think the reason why people are really attracted to them, I think, is that's kind of hard to answer. Like I think it's partially just because that's I think it's also because it's particularly for fighting animation. I think people are able to measure what makes good fighting animation much better, at least in their own minds, just
Yeah.
because, like we will watch action movies, and when you see like a fight that's really like intense and heated, you kind of you understand the language of like aggression and so much easier, as opposed to like some really subtle animation, someone picking up a cup. Like how do you really talk about that so easily? And so I think people are drawn to that because, like, I guess action language is so much easier to understand, and action is so much easier. When I say easy, not in the sense it's easy to animate, but it's easier to, I think, grasp what quote unquote makes a good fight, and what makes a fight feel brutal and so on, as opposed to like other forms of animation. But yeah, like you hardly see online, someone saying that like this animation is never going to be topped. And it's, someone like some really like small animation, someone getting out of bed, for example, that's really well done, but people don't really talk about it like that.
Yeah, it's like the inherent flashiness that is pretty much you get in action anime or any action scene. It's about what's really flashy, and that's what is kind of doing the rounds in terms of popularity.
Although I'm not gonna lie, like I think some people also they sort of equal flashy to being bad, which I don't agree with. Like I think you can have really great flashy animation, and maybe like I'm betraying what some people thought of me, but like I think the flashiness of Demon Slayer is actually really good, and one of the things I really like about it, if anything, I think it brings out like the individuality of the characters so much more. And what those are like the highlights of the series to me, and I think they are really like well thought out and good. I don't think everything that is flashy is inherently good, just because like of course I think you have to make compromises for the viewer to kind of understand what they're watching, but I wouldn't say that like it's flashy therefore it's shallow, because there's so much you can do with like really flashy things. Look at all these shows, like they have all these flashy moments, but those what make them exciting as well. So I think you kind of have to like find the balance between those two things.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, Jamal. As a subtle animation enjoyer, I am betrayed. I feel betrayed. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think no, that's definitely true. I don't think flashy is bad. I just feel like with a lot of the stuff that's being praised, usually that's kind of like what you were saying. It's what's noticed first. So because I think the problem with the Demon Slayer episode, in terms of the context of this conversation, of like why it's being praised. It doesn't have much to do with conversation of it's telling a story visually. It's kind of really apparent what it's telling. It's a fight, so there's not really much to kind of, you know, that you have to kind of really look at and pay attention to. Whereas in your content, what you're talking about more is more of this subtle, like intricate stuff that kind of goes often unnoticed or is underappreciated, and that's the stuff that really helps elevate a lot of these works.
Yeah, I think you always have to have that balance, and that's maybe one of my like perhaps one of my qualms with Demon Slayer is more the fact that and even some other shows as well, like a show like Attack on Titan. Like I really like Attack on Titan. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm
Gotta
not,
set the
yeah,
no hate zone. All love for Attack on Titan.
yeah, but I think it's more the range of its animation. I think is quite limited in the sense that like it is oriented pretty towards the action stuff, and like that's fair, of course, based on resources and time and so on. Like I get it. You want to. Those are the main parts of the
Yeah.
show. Those are the heights of the show, and I love those moments. But I think perhaps for drawing out what makes those, I think there are also some really great parts of those shows that could maybe, I don't want to say do with more work, but perhaps more attention could be put into, I guess there's subtle elements. But that being said, like, I still think like Demon Slayer, I think compensates for that in different ways through like, I guess the general direction cinematography of that show is like really good on average. And yeah, so I think it's more just the fact that you kind of need a bit that even spread to really, at least if you're trying to tell a story visually, you have to kind of balance things out. And of course, I don't want to a bit of an unfair comparison, but I think why some people really like say Ghibli movies, for example, is because they have that even spread. You have they build the character visually through the animation, not particularly during the big action moments, but just generally throughout. And of course, like again, it's a bit unfair because of the resources they have, the time they have, etc. But just the general idea of those movies, of kind of what I think make them attractive, and maybe what a few like more shows, if they have like the opportunity to do so, could maybe like adopt.
Yeah, I've found I think the more I've like been aware of different types of animation, and then like the attention to detail placed, I find that like I've gone from thinking of kind of like very flashy fights. This is going to sound really snob. Excuse what I'm going to say. It's so I still love like really flashy fights and like the kind of spectacle flashiness. I still love that, but I think I've come to the point where I kind of remember the like very detailed character moments a lot more, because I think it is kind of a bit more rare to have that stick in your mind, or at least pay attention to like the subtle character animation. So like now when I think back to even like some of my favorite action series, I'm like, oh, if they can nail the character animation, then that's like when they're really kind of crossing the border into being like consistently excellent. So like I remember like in like Haikyuu season 2, like the fight with like Hinata and Kageyama, they just like really carried the weight of both characters really well. I have like a certain clip I have on like Sakugaboro that I'm like, that's the one, this is good stuff. But it's like, most people probably wouldn't remember as much, but since I've seen the series like 3 or 4 times, I'm like, that stands out to me. That's some cool stuff.
Yeah, that's also why I really appreciate shows like My Dress Up Darling, for example, in the sense that I think it's particularly because I think that show has a level of popularity to the point to which like that will have some people that maybe are more inclined to watch action things and maybe watch that show as well. And so a show like that, which is I don't want to say pure like acting, but they're not really fighting and so on. The action at most is probably like a character running, for example. And so I think that is those shows like that, I think really give the opportunity for people to really appreciate that sort of animation as well. Besides, again, your sword fights and like martial art moments. And those shows are also just like really good and fun to watch, like on a regular basis.
Yeah, we've captured all the Dress Up Darling enjoyers. We got them all, which is good to see.
Yeah. I did have a question for you, actually, Jamal. So, if you don't know, if someone doesn't know anything about kind of like looking more into the production side of anime and kind of wants to appreciate that side of it more, what do you like if they are starting completely from zero? and they kind of just want to dabble in it. What do you consider the essentials? Like if they don't need to know everything, but just like a few things, like either essential animators or directors or even just terms. What do you think is
Right.
the most important to start off?
I think maybe like obviously this is going to be a bit biased to like what I'm into and what I focus on, but I'd say the three like critical things to really okay, four like critical like I guess credits to start paying attention to are storyboard, episode direction, animation direction, and then like key animation. Mostly because like those are the things you're mostly going to be like looking at. And I say that mostly because I think everyone knows that a show is directed by like is directed by a person, if not like maybe one or two people, maybe even three people. But I think what most people don't really think of straight away is the fact that the show is also brought to you by like a team of people as well. Like, you know, about maybe 12 to I don't know 15 storyboard artists on a 12 episode show, for example, and multiple animation directors and episode directors, etc. So I think like if you really want to try and I guess get to that next level of like just trying to like appreciate anime as like a craft, I suppose you have to kind of go beyond just thinking of like Yuasa, but you have to think of all the people that work with Yuasa as well. And that's what I think will kind of build your understanding of I guess like how the show is put together and the fact that there are multiple visions working together. Yeah, that those would probably be. I kind of cheated on that question, kind of like.
No, that's a
But
good answer.
yeah, like that would kind of be like the things to pay attention to on like you know various websites like AniDB, for example. Like I would look at those things in particular.
Okay. And actually, now that you mentioned that, not to derail too much, but then do you not believe in auteur theory?
Ooh, that's I feel
Can
like
of
that's
worms.
also like yeah, that's like a controversial question. Yes and no in the sense that I think I think there's something to be said about the fact that there are like really influential big creators in the anime space, but I don't I think putting a focus and I don't know like really any formal critiques of auteur theory, so I'm not really drawing on that, but like I think there's just anime is much more micro than that, or at least there are many more micro things going on in the anime process to kind of focus purely on individuals. In the same way that people also kind of devote a lot of things to studios in like the anime sphere, you know, like oh, Mappa did a great job here, Kyoto Animation did a great job here, and those are like I understand where they're coming from. I'm not particularly dissing them, but it's more like there's much it goes much deeper down than just like a single entity, and so I think like if you want to view anime a bit more technically, you have to get a bit more into the weeds and view it as individual people and like teams and so on, but not like devoting it to individual big people that you know just shaped everything, because there are so many things going on in the landscape, and like within a show to like I guess devote it to like a single auteur or like a quote unquote like auteur studio, if you could say that.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I actually mentioned it is because that actually happens a lot with Anno and Evangelion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you go really deep into Evangelion, like the discourse, or you start looking up interviews and stuff like that, a lot of people attribute like a lot of it to Anno, and then there's like detractors that are like, well, it's a team. It wasn't just him. There were other people involved. Like, not all of it was just him. So,
Yeah.
you know, so I just wanted to see your perspective on that.
Sounds like a very balanced perspective. To go away from that, who is your favorite and pit your favorite directors against each other? Do you have like a favorite director, like storyboarder or like key animator? It could just be director, just to keep it competitive for the auteur theory follow-up.
Yeah. This is all very much like my top 5 anime list. Like it's very much like just vibes at the moment. So I'd say if I was to say like my favorite director in anime like right now, it'd probably be the Tatsuya Oishi from you know director of Kizu Monogatari, Bakemonogatari, and various other things. Yeah, I'd say he's probably like been the director that's influenced just how like not even just in terms of anime but just how I view art in general. It's just like completely changed after like I watched both Bakemonogatari and Kizu Monogatari. And yeah, like I just can't really see it any different now. So yeah, I probably say Oishi's like up there for me.
I need him to do like more things. Like I think he's like chef's kiss. So because those are probably my two favorite Monogatari entries at this point, like Bake and Kizu, and I'm not saying I wish he did everything else, but I wish he did more things for me to watch without
Yeah.
taking away from the other director.
Yeah, he kind of like did a bit of a mic drop.
Yeah.
And so like
Yeah.
I believe he has done a few smaller things, very small things here and there, but I can't remember them like off the top of my head. But
Mhm.
yeah, no like very big projects as of yet, which is like very unfortunate for someone that is maybe like one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like kind of hurt, but I do hope like they are doing well. I don't know what happened, but yeah.
Yeah, I need him to do everything because because he did essentially kind of start it off. Like Bake was like the really big, it set off the series for success. So it was really cool to see. And then see, I'm not sure. Did you watch Monogatari when like Kizu was out already, or did you see Bake and then were you there for like the 10-year gap between like Bake and Kizu dropping?
Unfortunately, like I didn't have to suffer through that. Like I
Okay,
kind of just watched the whole series when it was all out.
good
So
call.
I just kind of had the advantage of just watching and letting it all wash over me. But yeah, I that would have been very painful to like like wait 10 years of like 10 years of like hard suffering for you got like good results at the end of the
Yeah.
day, but like yeah, that's probably that's harder than like what Bleach fans have had to go through. To be
Yeah.
fair.
That's so true. That's yeah, that's good. That'll be interesting to see this upcoming season. But yeah, I didn't see Bake in '09, but I was both I saw it in like 2015, but I was both spared the watch order discussions of do you watch Nisei or Kizu after
Yeah.
Bake? I was saved because Nisei was the only option, but I did wait a bit for Kizu. So as you said, the results were worth it. But yeah, it was a bit of a wait.
Yeah, I also like maybe just to like out myself, I did watch Kizu in release order, not like right after Bakemonogatari, and I liked it
Yeah.
honestly. No matter what people say, I know some people say no, you're doing it wrong. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I liked it, and it was cool, and it was one of the best experiences ever. So like I don't regret anything.
Yeah. And that's all that matters. I don't think it really matters at that point. It's like, if you enjoyed it, that's all that matters at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Release order is Kizu after Bake? Is that what release order is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's how I watched it. Okay.
Yeah. Because that's how the original light novels, I think, were released.
Yeah.
So like it
Yeah.
works, but yeah.
I partially like wanted to just get to it first anyway, but and then I found validation by looking up a watch order. And like, well, this is release order. I'm like, yes, okay, I'm doing it. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. But so then who is your best mono girl? That it has to happen.
This is hard and maybe a bit of a controversial take, but I actually say okay, wait. I just thought okay, yeah. It'll probably just be Shinobu. Like that's maybe a bit of a boring one, but yeah.
No, that's good. No, that's good. We got the two Shinobu stands.
I was
Good.
about to say Mayoi, but then I realized like Shinobu kind of exists, so I had to like change that really quick.
Exactly.
Those are cool picks, though. I like it when people have like Mayoi. She's not my favorite, but it's cool to see like switching it up a bit.
Yeah, like the way she's handled in the series obviously like can be very much like for scrutiny, and I very much understand that before something's
Yep.
like I'm really weird because like I recognize what's very wrong with those moments, but like I think it really clicks with me in like the Mayo Hell arc, I think it is, or no, Mayo Jiangxi. I think really like those two arcs I think are like two of the best in the series. And yeah, I think that's kind of what her first arc is kind of boring for me. Like it's kind of whatever, but like I think she really becomes like I guess we can maybe call a true character, or at least a fully fledged up character, like by that time in the series.
Do you feel like speaking of Monogatari and like going through the whole series, did you feel like something was lost visually and stylistically as you get further on? Like how like Bake was really known really for being all of the the most stylish, and then by the time you get to Nisei or even second season, it's not really the same. It's not like that anymore.
I'm gonna actually say no. Like I think it's really because of like Akiyuki Shimbo as a whole. Like I think the show is for a show of its length. I think it's very consistent. Like it and maybe even to a fault in the sense that like and something that I often try to recommend now before someone watches back in Monogatari or Monogatari in general is to watch The Soul Taker, which is a show by Shimbo. And that's because it's him and Akio Watanabe, and they kind of do a very similar thing, maybe not a similar thing. It's probably even more intense than Monogatari, but like if you watch that show, you'll definitely understand where Monogatari is coming from a stylistic point of view. And I think that a lot of that vision is still there, even if it's not exactly the same. And so I think like the overall, like I guess style of the Monogatari series, that sort of surrealist edge it has, is like very consistent for how, based on how long it is. I think that's still very prominent, and just really why I appreciate it so much, because it feels I personally, maybe because it's been a long time, but I personally feel like it stayed very much the same, and again consistent like throughout most of its run, even after Oishi wasn't necessarily like directing the show per se. And I think that's really just because like there's a really good glue to that show, and that glue is Shimbo. Yeah,
that makes sense. Do you have a favorite? We talked about like not treating like studios like monoliths, but do you have a favorite studio in terms of like visual identity, or at least like visual consistency that you really connect with?
right. Yeah, like I usually, as you kind of like alluded to, I do kind of stay away from saying like I have a favorite studio, mostly because like you do kind of, it does get a bit reductionist. But like if I was to say where I like a lot of the creators at certain studios, Shaft would probably be one of those places. I know you said one, but like if I was to just say a few,
go as many as you want.
Yeah, like
yeah, it's okay now. As soon as studios start following you, then you can't say this stuff.
Yeah. I'll be in a lot of trouble when Mappa starts following me. Yeah, I'd say also I'm really into a lot of the directors recently at like Cloverworks, or at least those who've been working with Cloverworks, namely like Shima Kobayashi and Shinohara and some of those people. Yeah, like I like people from a bit of everywhere, to be fair, because then like you could say, oh, I'm into some of the people like Science Saru, or at least some of the former people from Science Saru, and Madhouse, etc. Like that's the thing. When you get me like talking about studios, I eventually just start talking about like everyone in the industry, and then it kind of doesn't really become about studios anymore. But yeah, like if I was to like say something, it'd probably be again like those Shaft directors and those Cloverworks directors at the moment. But like as always, it's like always changing, I guess, just depending on the mood and like what's being made.
That's cool. Yeah, I had a feeling it would be Shaft, but I wanted to confirm. But also good to qualify that it's like always changing, because it's cool that you're like, well, then I just get into people who are all over the industry, and that's like the cool realization you have the more you get into it, that you're like, no, these people have worked everywhere, so it's not like this studio is the best versus this studio, where it becomes kind of like a sporting event of like, which studio do you got?
And that's the sorry.
No,
and that's the thing that like I think people have to realize about anime, is the fact that like the industry is so connected to the point where just like to say that like, oh, I like this place isn't really saying much at the end of the day, because one second they are working at this place, and then the next second they're working at a completely different place. Most people aren't very tied down to specific places, which is why I think like it's not to say that you shouldn't care about a studio, because those are like the very basis through which like people create stuff through. But I don't think like you should put all your emphasis into those specifically, just because like they are at the end of the day sort of, I guess, like buildings and infrastructure, as opposed to like they're not, a studio isn't a creative, they're not they're not a vision. The people are the vision, and they like constantly move around and move that vision like throughout the industry.
Yeah, it's been really funny to see. I'm sure Shinichi Yamata, the director of the director of Rakugo and Kaguya-sama for everyone. It's been really funny to see, Rakugo and Kaguya-sama, I would call like two of the, most acclaimed series of the decade, depending on the decade you look at. It's been really funny to see because he worked, I think, originally at Shaft, but then he started working at Studio Dean, a studio that is not known for much favorable praise based on their handling of some series. So then you see people are shocked that, Studio Dean has Anime of the Year because they're so used to kind of like criticizing Studio Dean. And then he moves on to A1 Studios, which was the punching bag of like the 2010s because they had Sword Art Online and like so many different like light novel battle harem adaptations that people look down upon. And now I see people saying, because of Kaguya-sama and his work there, that they want A1 Studios to take over an adaptation of something. Meanwhile, if it was like 5 years ago, you would never see anyone say, I want A1 Studios to work on my favorite my favorite manga coming out. So it's so funny to see. And it's all because of like this one person has done, not only him, but like the shows he worked on and have done such a great job with that. Like now people are changing their opinions on studios because of the people behind them. So it's been kind of funny to see how it's changed over the years.
Yeah, it's like I feel like that's the thing you can do. It's such a simple step to change your view on that. It's like just understand that this is a person making the thing as opposed to like, just I don't want to say like soulless corporate entity, but that's like the best I can say it. Like, rather than that, just like understand that this is a person moving around and support the person as opposed to like just supporting the building. It's not that hard, I don't think. Obviously there are things to do to like I guess really get into it, but like I think you can I don't think that's much of a leap to like just understand that.
Yeah, definitely. What was I gonna say? I think it's interesting to see like there's a lot of like interesting ways that I think like when you're first starting out, like the discussion can kind of go in one direction. Do you feel like for the people who are very much like in the weeds of like the creator to creator content, like everyone who's like really in the weeds, do you feel like there's some kind of discourse that you find to be less productive? Maybe it's like people are getting a bit too pedantic or a bit too nitpicky about certain ways of viewing the medium after getting like super knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a critique of just general like very niche hobbies. Is the fact that I think some people forget that they are part of like a very small group of people that understand very esoteric information. And so like I understand why some people like, anime definitely does have like rampant misinformation problem, but like definitely I understand that, like and I'm very much like against that. And I guess trying to, I'm not solving it, but like at least trying to push back against it. But I can also understand the fact that like this is niche information that most people don't know and or care. And so I think like when communicating with people who don't understand, I think you have to kind of balance how you approach them, just because like this is completely new to them. They don't understand this, and like you don't have to be like patronizing about it, but at the same time, like I think you just have to understand that like this is something that I think the community is still trying to get to grips with. It's been a long time, but like with more resources and things being available, and more things in English being available, I think we just kind of have to grow together. I know it's like, it sounds like a very like, very happy take, but like I think we do have to try and I guess understand that this is something that's gonna like take time to solve, and thus like kind of understanding that not everyone is on the same page with like the very niche things that about anime and anime production and just like the art of anime, because a lot of people again just watch it very casually on their nights after work, and so like expecting to know so much is a bit like of I guess too much to ask maybe, so you kind of have to compromise a bit, I think.
I think that makes sense, and I think it's pretty fair because it's like it's easy to kind of forget. It is kind of easy as you said to forget that like not everyone is super interested in getting in the weeds, and they do kind of consume it as a hobby. So it's a tough balancing act.
Do you ever think there's a point where now on the other side of that, do you ever think there's a point where people are reading too deeply into something? Or do you think all takes are just like valid? All readings are pretty much
except the
valid?
Sangatsu take. That's not valid. We decided.
Yeah, excluding that one Sengetsu take. It's like,
Yes.
but I think I don't think you can read too deep into something. Like, I think you can definitely disagree with the lengths to which someone is going, but I think it's more the fact that there are definitely some things that are unreasonable, I'd say, like, saying X is Y is like not right, but I don't think you can read too deep, just because I think it at the end of the day, it's just what you view as it's just what you think of it at the end of the day. So I don't really know how like truly deep you can read into it. And also I just think the whole rhetoric of you're reading too deep into things is very harmful for like media literacy, because most people often kind of stop at either the literal reading or one reading, and that's it. And so I think it's less of the fact that I think, not to like change the question, but I don't think it's really a matter of whether you can read too deep into something or not, but whether like you should be reading into things, I think, is more of the thing, as opposed to like whether it's too much or too little. Like that can come later, but what's more important, I think, is the fact that like you're really engaging with the thing itself, as opposed to kind of just like seeing it for its surface and then saying anything that isn't the surface is too deep, really.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In the kind of light of that, this is the hot take safe zone, because we have to bring back hot takes battle royale to see truly the most hot takes. But is there any like I know that like as podcasters and creators, like sometimes there are like thoughts and opinions that you want to express, but you can't because it's either not enough for an episode or like it doesn't fit with the theme. What is like the hot take that you've always wanted to express, but that you could not have because it didn't work for a video, or you didn't want to post it on Twitter and have the Hunter x Hunter composer unfollow you, but you can say here and avoid responsibility?
Yeah, we'll take responsibility.
Yeah, our responsibility.
It's actually really hard, because like I'm not gonna lie, like this is gonna make me sound really like milk toast, but like I don't actually have many like hot takes. I don't mean it like I'm just so modest, but like I'm just kind of boring in the sense that like, I just like a lot of stuff.
Everyone thinks that, and guess who said the exact same thing? The person who said that Sangatsu is not their favorite. They say I don't have hot takes, and I had to remind them of their hot takes. So we all have that one.
I honestly like can't think of one on the spot.
I am putting you on the spot, so that was out of nowhere.
If you need an assist, I was gonna ask you this earlier. What is an anime that you do not like? Like you don't even care, you don't understand. Like you understand it, but you just don't like it. Or hate.
Okay, yeah, I have one. Rising of the Shield Hero. I don't like that shit.
Which one?
Rising of the Shield Hero.
Yeah, we go. Yes.
I just that's just one show I can say. Like, yeah, I just don't like it. It's just not. The first episodes had me hooked. I'm not gonna lie. And then like I watched those during like an anime society, like an anime club, and like I had to continue watching it. But then the more I got into it, the more I just realized that I felt like I was just wasting my own time. I just didn't like it really. I didn't really understand. And what's funny is that maybe I'm just projecting here, but like I was looking. I like to be a bit of a hater and look at shows that I don't like and just see like what people are thinking about it. And then like with Shield Hero, people for season 2, people were just like, was this show always this bad? And so I felt kind of like validated that maybe I wasn't crazy like a few years ago. But that's the exact same
spot, because I feel like you have people in two camps where they're like, I never liked it and it was always bad, or like it's not as good as it was at the beginning. But I was hooked on the first couple episodes too. I was willing to give it a chance despite the criticism. And then you get to the end and you're like, I wasted my time. This was an absolute waste of time. So I feel you on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what's actually going on with My Hero Academia right now. Everybody's like rising up. And it was always bad. No, I freaking knew it.
Okay.
Even Shaw's like,
I disagree with that one.
No, because I was talking. I was talking with Tay about this, and I said, look, these people are co-opting our hate train from 6 years ago. We were day one haters, and everyone else was a day one lover. They're like, oh, it's great. It'll be great. And now they're coming around to our side. And I'm like, no, you guys are not built the same. You guys are different. You're coming at it from a different place. But I mean, you know, it is what it is. But I'm the true hate. I'm the true hater.
I am
Academia.
who I am.
I'm the true hater.
Oh God,
True hater academia over here.
this is it.
Yeah. See, that's like a good hot take to have now, though. Rising as Shield Hero,
Yeah.
not My Hero Academia. That one was never a good hot take to have, even when it was a hot take. But
Yeah.
To be
the
fair,
Shield Hero
I
one
think it's
works.
a nice take to have right now. Like I think you have like decent support. You say like My Hero Academia went downhill. Like I think a lot of people are like okay with that at the moment.
Yeah, it might be hard to believe, but I'm not happy to see it because I was looking forward to catching up and seeing it get good. So I feel bad for the wholesome fans like Onimaru, who's just like, I just enjoy it and I'm having fun. And then I'm like, what is it, like the Fortress of Doom over here, like laughing with like
Yeah,
lightning
just
in the
like-
background.
Always hated it.
Professional hater over here. But no, I'm not happy to see that one go downhill as much as you think. But yeah, no, Shield Hero is a good one to be like, I was right. It was always bad.
Yeah. Any others that you actually any other well loved ones that don't vibe with you?
Ooh, I thought Shield Hero was that.
I mean, it is,
Yeah.
but it does have some controversy. So like,
Well liked anime that I don't like. I'm struggling again. Like I just don't know because I'm just so boring. I think.
No.
I feel like it would be too niche to say. Like there are some movies from like okay, this isn't. But for example, this isn't a specific anime, but it's not to say that I don't like anime from the 70s, but like there's some shows from like that era that I just don't resonate with. It's not that they're bad, I just don't really feel it that much. And so yeah, that's maybe one of those things that like that will kind of like lay buried like here on like the Just Weebs like vault. But
Yeah. Until we
I
get to
just-
Rosa Versailles, and then we're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, we love this. And then we're like, wait a minute, but did Jamal love it?
Yeah, the thing is that there are some 70s anime that I really like. There's some really good movies from the 70s particularly, but like in terms of the TV series, I don't know, I just don't really quite feel them in the way that like some people that are really deep into them do. And to be fair, like it does take time sometimes to get into those sorts of things. Like I think I've finally, it's not like I dislike the 80s, but I've really come around to really like loving 80s anime now. And so like I'm now comfortable with that, and I think that'll eventually happen with the 70s. But it's just like as I kind of said before, I changed like a lot based on the vibe and the feel, and like eventually I'll like start to feel it, and then I'll just kind of like it like everything else besides Shield Hero, of course. But,
Yeah.
it's okay. We can sensationalize that and turn it into like a really bad hot take. We'll just say Jamal says there is no peak anime in the 70s.
70s
yeah,
mid.
that'll be the thumbnail. Like 70s anime sucks.
70s
Explain.
anime in the mud. Yeah. Well, those are more wholesome hot takes than like our average one. At least my average one. I got
Yeah.
going to destroying anime films left and right, but
Yeah.
Anime films are just, hit or miss.
I think that was like a direct reference to Pancreas.
It always
I
is.
thought of 3 different movies, which is how I've turned the corner of knowing. Like I used to think I didn't have hot takes, and now I've turned the corner, and I'm like, no, I have hot takes. But my friend does not have the same level of self-awareness to remember that they don't like March Comes In Like a Lion to know that that's our hot take. But yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all I had.
Did you have any
you have
questions
any-
for
yeah.
us to incriminate us?
Yeah. Do you have any questions for us? This is your chance.
I'm thinking as like a long time viewer, like how can I make this as explosive as possible and like completely derail the podcast like from here on out. But
Destroy the podcast.
This is your moment.
hmm. I feel like no, you've already answered this before. I was gonna say like why do you just like why do you just hate pancreas, Sha? But like I think you've explained this like multiple times.
Yeah, I think the short answer, I have to come up with the short answer because the long-winded answer isn't working. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like looking up my old answers because I don't know how to like phrase it. But I just think it's like, I don't think it handles the subject matter well. And then I don't think there's like many redeeming qualities outside of that. So like if I took away my personal distaste with it, it would be like a bad movie, but now I have like that personal distaste with it, so it's a very bad movie. But I have to say that Pancreas fans have been some of the most like wholesome, good-spirited, like really like easygoing people. So I'm genuinely happy when people do like Pancreas. I just recognize that like I don't, but I like, if someone watches Pancreas, I don't want them to have like a bad time with it. I just know that I'm over here hating like behind closed doors. So,
but we are offended of how high it is on the Mal top 100. So.
Okay, it's below End of Evangelion. That's what I'm just saying.
It's too close.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Close. It's too.
I'm just saying. It's all fair. It's all fun and games until you see it below End of Evangelion. But that's my cross to bear. I mean, cross to carry. Okay. So that's not the phrase.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that really does hurt. Like, yeah, I don't know why End of Evangelion is not high. Like, I don't care that much about now, to be fair. But like, when it comes to the End of Evangelion, I start caring because
that happens to me all the time. It's like I don't care about Mal ratings, and then I just see one like score or like rating that on the list, and that's when I'm like, I care right now. It like flips a switch, but
I mean, I get why End of Evangelion is so low, but it is what it is.
I think it's gotten higher over time.
Yeah.
Which is good. But, I guess it makes sense when it's like such a controversial film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think though, like if we're just talking about Mal a bit, I think that I don't want to say, I dislike the culture of my anime list just because like, it's a large website, there's so many people on it. But I think that's also where a lot of the animation discourse that I really don't like stems from, in the sense that like, and people can review things how they review them, sure. But like, when people will review something in terms of like, animation has a score, story has a score, sound has a score. And it's like, I feel like those things are so... I also have like a larger critique of scoring, but that's like another thing. I don't like hate it or something because I do it myself on my anime list. That's why I have an account. But I think it's just viewing those things as such separate things as opposed to like a cohesive thing is kind of what I have a big problem with, just because like, we spend this whole podcast talking about it. It's just they're so like intertwined together, to like separate them out just feels very weird and like sort of clinical in a way that doesn't need to be.
This sounds like a hot take.
No, this is
maybe it is.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I score a lot of things, but I agree with you because I'll read reviews where they're just they do feel so kind of like clinical, of like, here's the animation section, here's the story section, here's the characters. And I like it a bit more when you can kind of get a sense of like how they feel about it. And maybe they'll mention like, I think it looks good and this is why the visuals complemented everything. But I do think it gets a bit too much where people are like, score, average it up, score. And then it's like, sometimes I think people forget that like the numerical score is supposed to represent how you feel, but like your feeling come before the score. It's not like the score and then your feelings.
Yeah. And I think maybe this is a grander critique I have of like education as well, in the sense of like a lot of education regarding media is very much about teaching people to analyze writing and how things are written, and how words have meaning and so on. But there really isn't that same level of support for understanding how something moves and how you can describe that and how that works. Like, we do a lot of drawing in school, but we don't really talk about what the effects of the drawings are and what the story they tell. And I think that's like a really important thing for media literacy, because media literacy, shocker, isn't just books. You're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
consume so many more things, and you need to understand so many more things, I think, to really like engage with media and understand like what you're viewing, as well as just reading.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
totally
so
agree with
true.
that.
Yeah. This is somewhat related but not, but I think the pinnacle of like bad it taking and my anime list culture, but also like IMDb culture, like just the whole like aggregated data rating website culture is
Yeah.
I saw in one of the conversations for you know one of the Demon Slayer clips going viral or whatever. One of the comments was saying, I am not going to, I'm not a huge fan of Demon Slayer, but I'm not going to criticize the highest rated anime episode on IMDb. And they said it was like, referring to Demon Slayer, the latest season, like the big fight scene. They're saying that one was the highest rated on IMDb. And then other people were kind of like, well, you don't have to like it if it's the top one. And they're like, but this is like, everyone has voted on this website and they're saying this one is the best episode. And funny enough, it wasn't the highest rated episode. There were like 3 Attack on Titan episodes ahead of it on IMDb. So
Right. Yeah.
they weren't even correct about it being the highest rated episode. But it's also so funny how like so many people play into that idea of like, this thing must be the best because so many people have voted with their scores on it being the best. And you're like, you can just like not agree. You could just like not agree with like my anime list, IMDb, etc.
Well, at that point, I
Yeah.
think they're struggling with not wanting to feel like they're the uncultured one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I
But-
think like if you really want to dive into like if we like again kind of sort of go back to animation, if you really want to get in touch with animation, you have to really stretch yourself and go outside of like the top rated things, because there are a lot of incredible and even influential things in the space of anime that like you don't really see near like the top even 200 or 1000 on Mal. Like a lot of those things are very deep, and you have to kind of dig beyond just what you see on the surface to I guess explore what animation is all about in anime. And yeah, like there's much more to just what people think is good. And you can also just find a lot of things that I really like are things that I don't like try and sound like I'm some sort of like hipster or something, but like a lot of the things that I like are also things that aren't particularly like in the mainstream, and that's fine. Like I don't make it my whole identity or something, but like it's worth exploring those things just for your own I guess understanding and just enjoyment as well, because I'm sure there's something deep there's probably that I think that there's like a 90s 80s OVA that had like 100 viewers for everyone. That there's one out there because there are so many made. You just kind of have to find it, really.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really accurate and true. And I found that to be true in my experience, and I think Onimaru has, because I think we've all seen something that's not mainstream that's really clicked with us, and then we're like, okay, this thing is cool. We want more people on it, or maybe not, because then sometimes when you get like people on like the obscure stuff, you're like, actually, no, I don't want anyone on this anymore.
I mean, super recent example is Sunny Boy. I just checked; it's ranked number 1016, and that has like some very crazy, like very like outstanding moments within it. So, and it's very far down.
Sunny Boy was like an experience, and I think also like a really great moment for like Shingo Natsume getting recognition in like the English speaking fandom as well. Like I not to say that no one knew who Shingo Natsume was, but I think people knowing Shingo Natsume for Shingo Natsume as opposed to like the One Punch Man director, I think it was like a really big step, and people really found a show that was very I guess unique and something that they hadn't seen before, and that like those are the sort of shows that I really love, because and I think that's why a lot of people that are really like into animation like original anime in particular, because I think it really allows like the director and the people behind the show to shine, because that's all you have to look to. You don't have to look to and it's not to disregard manga creators or light novel writers or anything, but it's like I think there's no really divided attention in between, or like divided praise. It can all go to I guess this single team, and I think yeah, that's why I really love like what happened with Sunny Boy, really, because I think it drew people into, I guess, viewing the creatives for creatives and like that vision that like a lot of people usually don't realize when it comes to other shows, and particularly like adaptations.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Sunny Boy is really going to go down as like maybe not the best. Maybe I don't know if it's an accurate comparison. I don't want to be doing disservice to either, but I think it's going to be like the 2020s Fooly Cooly, or like the new, like an original series that like, I know Fooly Cooly was popular, but I think it was popular in like certain circles, but it's kind of like grown to become like a staple over time. And I think that's going to happen with Sunny Boy, where it's already kind of like a staple among people who are like into anime beyond just like the really popular titles. But I think it's only going to continue to grow as like a staple piece of like part of the medium. So I think it's really cool to see that, because you see so many like really wacky but like good wacky series that you wouldn't find in any other medium, and it's always cool to celebrate those. And I think Sunny Boy is just like a great reminder of like the creativity in the medium.
Yeah. And that's really just like, I think that sums up why I just love original anime. It's the creativity that's behind it. Not to say again that like adaptations are creative. There are so many amazing creative adaptations that we've even mentioned throughout this whole cast. But I think original anime is really great because it's very much suited for animation in itself, as opposed to, so that there's not really any, I guess, translation, at least from the like visual perspective going on. It's recognized and constructed around the fact that it's going to be animated, as opposed to like, oh, how do we make this thing turn into this while also animating it? And so I think you get a much more purer creative vision. There are, of course, like flops of original anime, of course, and some of them really suck, but I think the best ones are ones that are really gonna like do a real number on your perspective, really, just because you get to, I guess, I think you kind of almost get to engage with the creator much more through the work. And like, you know, who doesn't like doing that, really?
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking notes on everything you're saying for the next time a Promare discussion comes up and I can defend Promare to the masses. I'm like, got original anime film. I'm just saying.
I love Promare.
Thank you.
Good one.
Let's go. Let's go. There's too many. The way I flip the switch and turn from like I guess like meathead, like this thing is hype, to like when people like don't like Promare, and then I'm like, why are you disrespecting the craft of the medium? How dare you? And then I just immediately turn flip the switch and just sound like up my ass the whole time, but because I'm not accurately communicating it. But I'm like, look at this art.
Yeah, Promare really is like art in my head, at least. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good. But I'm also biased. I did watch it in a room with Studio Trigger, so
we were in the same room and we didn't know each other at the time because we got to see it at AX. Yeah.
That's a really good story, actually. Yeah.
We experienced an earthquake with Studio Trigger.
Wait, what?
So, it was like July 4th weekend of 2019, and there were like 2 earthquakes in LA that time. One happened like the first day, I guess it was like July 3rd, whatever. There was like a big earthquake, but it was like kind of whatever. The second earthquake happened, and it was like a much larger earthquake. And the way they had it was like they showed the, I guess, North American premiere of Promare, and then they had a panel afterwards with Studio Trigger where like people could like ask them questions or whatever. And like during the panel, there was like a huge earthquake, and they're not even like batting an eye, and we're all like, this is scary. Like there were like these huge lights above us. I'm like, what if they fall?
Huge speaker on one side, everybody's like backing away, like it's gonna fall.
Wow. That's one way to experience the movie.
Yeah, it was hype.
yeah, that definitely helped. Really made you feel like the earth was crumbling under you and there was a giant volcano. So I guess just LA things, because I'm not used to earthquakes, but I think they were. So
yeah, you get to say like, like you experienced promare like at home or on your chair. Like I experienced it while like going through an earthquake in a cinema with Studio Trigger. Like that's the biggest flex like you can ever have, really.
And Studio Trigger looking like badasses, not batting an eye. Just like, you guys are weak.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely
Wow.
that's why I was like, I'm not sure if I actually like this movie or if we just had a good time. So then like watch it in theaters a couple times back at home and I'm like, okay, no, I actually do like this movie, even when Studio Trigger and Earthquakes aren't here. So it's a nice confirmation.
Good movie, but nothing beats that first time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We had a question in chat on what's your thoughts on Kare Kano? I'll just bring that up. Since that seems like that was a good example before our Promare diversion.
It's going to be quite a disappointing answer that I just haven't seen Karikana, so I just can't really have a take on it. I should have, and I really should, like, but I just haven't. So yeah.
It's okay. I haven't seen it either, so same boat.
Yeah.
I think you guys would both.
Bad.
I think you guys would both like it. I saw it somewhat recently, like within a year, and it was very good. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
I have to watch it.
Watch it, and then we'll have the Karikano pod.
Ironically, as like the big Evangelion fans have not seen Karikano.
Yeah, so you have to. And then talk about it.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I love average Hunter x Hunter enjoyer was wondering, what are your thoughts on 86?
Oh, 86. Okay, this is where my hot takes come. Okay.
Let's go. Let's go.
86 part 1 really took me by surprise. I really liked the first part. I think the first part, I thought that this was going to be kind of like, you know, the usual like political racism thing that they, you know, like, and it actually took me by surprise on how like much, I guess, nuance was in its discussion, and visually it was quite nice as well. And then part 2 is where I'm like, this isn't that good anymore. I think part 2 is where it waters down a lot of what it has to say, and also visually as well. I understand it was going through major production issues, so like, you know, those episodes were being really delayed, and the direction was like very, I guess, mediocre for what it was, which is unfortunate, but I understand that. The second to last episode and the last episode are really, really good. Like the second to last episode is like one of the best episodes I've seen this year. It was like top notch, but it's just kind of hard for me to say that I really liked part 2 when like it had 2 good episodes to me. I know it's like a bit brutal, but like yeah.
No, that's
so
fair.
86 kind of has like a mixed legacy in my head where it's kind of good, and I think it has the potential to be really good, but it didn't really quite realize that in the second part of like the show.
Yeah, I got to catch up on the second part, but I feel like that tracks to what I've heard, at least in terms that I only hear about the last 2 episodes.
Yeah,
and
they kind of make up for like the whole second half of the season, and that's why I think most people kind of forgive it. But if you did not enjoy, and plus I don't know, Jamal, did you binge it too? Because I like binged most of the second half.
Yeah, I watched it in like a week. Okay. Yeah, it was kind of more like the disappointment came really quick though, because like I was on a big high after 86 part 1. I was like, okay, this is actually like really good. I really liked this. I love what it's doing. And then part 2 hit, and then like slowly but surely I was realizing that this isn't quite right, or at least this is getting much worse and repetitive. And then and then the final 2 pardon, sorry?
No, I just said that's the biggest thing with part 2. It's the repetitiveness. It kind of makes it into a slog.
Yeah, and then like the final 2 episodes, I watched the last I managed to catch the last episode on like the weekly basis, I think, or I think it was the last 2, and yeah, like I really liked those, but I just because I binged it, I couldn't really like I guess I couldn't see past those because they were like fresh in my head, as opposed to maybe if I watched it like 12 weeks ago or like 5 weeks ago, I would have felt like pretty different. But yeah, it all was a bit of a mess to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will see when I binge it, because at this point I have to binge the first part and then the second part. But yeah, that we found your hot take. We did it. And that did not sound that brutal. That sounded very nice. I guess we have one more question on how do you feel about Skate to Infinity?
I like Skate. I think Skate's really good. Yeah, overall, I just think it's a really fun show. nice product. Like it also did a lot of shows around this time also had production issues, but like overall it kind of held its own. It's a nice show. I really like. In just in terms of like I don't know if I can really speak much on the animation. The animation is really good, but like just in terms of the writing, I really like how its emphasis on sports is about fun as opposed to like being the best. And
Yeah.
I just like how local it feels as
Yeah.
opposed to like we're going through the tournaments to be the best. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with those. Those can be really good, and like I'm a ping pong fan. I like haiku and so on, but like I do like that slight change for a second of just thinking of sports as recreational as opposed to like being making a career out of it or
Yeah.
being the best ever. And so skate I really liked it. I didn't really have much stuff to say after that.
Yeah.
It was good, especially Adam.
Adam was
Skateboarding Dio. We have 2 more if you have time.
no, sure, yeah, I have plenty of time.
I'm gonna go in opposite order because I think this might. The question is, have you seen Steins Gate?
I knew she was going for that one.
Yes.
No, I'm going in both, but I have to. I feel like one leads. Yeah.
I feel under pressure now because Shah's here. Like the Steins Gate like emperor.
No.
Give us the hot take. Say
no,
it, don't
you
hold
get
back.
no. Yeah, free. It's a safe place. I do not care, in the best way possible.
No, I love Steins Gate. I think Steins Gate is
yay.
incredible. It's been a long time since I've watched it though, and so like that I think that's one of those shows that I said that like I might watch it again and I might think it's like not that good, but I don't think that'll be the case with Steins Gate. Like I really liked what I saw of it. Once again, it was like I think it was probably one of the first like maybe 10-20 anime I ever watched. So
Nice.
like it's been years since I watched that, but yeah, I think it's really good. I really liked how I guess of how complicated it was. It really goes. It takes its time to really get into time travel and its mechanics, and it doesn't. Yeah, like it could have done a really quick information dump at the beginning and then just kind of got into the quote unquote juicy stuff. But I really love how it takes its time to really build up what it is, and then the second half just really pays off from that. Yeah, like I think that also is one of the early shows that got me into appreciating, I guess, slower and more measured shows. Like I don't think it's poorly paced, but it definitely it takes its time with building what it is. And I think that's also why I love, I guess, now shows like Sunny Boy and stuff like that, or like Sarago Yo. Like they take their time, they're very measured. Like even Mushishi, and they pay off really well because it's not always about getting right to the point, but like building slowly to the point. And then when you get there, it's really good. So yeah, like Steins Gate, from what I like remember in my head, it's like a really great show.
We won. Let's go. Thanks.
Yeah, it has one of the best uses of time travel. So I hate when like media in general, like they're not about time travel, but then like in like one of the final arcs or close to the end, they just throw in a time travel mechanic, and time travel mechanics have the potential to like complicate a story so much if not done well. And it's like,
I think that's a big like act to Future Diaries, which I also happen to really dislike.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go in the mud.
It's a bit of a mess. Like I don't even want to get it. I just don't like it. I just don't.
It insists upon itself. Onimar, you haven't seen that one, right?
No, I have not. I've considered it though.
It's an experience for sure. Like I feel like you kind of have to watch it, even if it's not like, at least to me, good, but it's one of those essentials. Like it's just one of those ones.
There are certain shows you just kind of have to watch to just kind of get like the culture around it, or
need to know
memes. So
yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
I mean, I still have to finish Guilty Crown, so there's that.
I think Guilty Crown is kind of boring though. Like I saw the first 2 episodes and then I was kind of bored, and it hadn't gotten to like the bad part, and I'm like, how far do I have to go for it to like kind of fall off?
Yeah, I mean, I got to the bad part. That's why I didn't want to finish it. So.
Did I ever tell you that like I saw the opening before I saw any of the show, and I thought the opening was like this really cool like metaphor of like
Oh yeah, no,
she's
I remember this story.
she's like, and like the opening, it starts with like the girl and she's singing on like this, like she's singing like for an audience, but like it's the guy is watching her on camera. And I thought she was like a badass that who got like captured, and this is like a metaphor for him seeing her being captured, and then he has to go like save her. And I was like, yo, this is like really interesting. Like this is like some really cool symbolism, like right from the get-go. Like they're really conveying something cool. And then I found out she's like just literally an idol. So he's watching a music video of her. And that's like, there was like, no, I was like, that ruined the show for me. I didn't start it and I was like, okay, I can't watch the show. This is
Your
this is
premise
done.
was way more interesting.
My
than,
premise was,
Game of Thrones.
I headcanoned the show so well. And then I was like, wait a minute. This is not going to, no, we're done.
You should have marketed it. You could have just like done that angle in the trailer, got people to watch it, hype.
I was so deep in the weeds. I was in the guilty crown. And then it was like, no.
Oh my God.
Like that is what people say when they're like, oh, you're reading too deep into things. Like that's what they try to, that's what they think like people are doing.
That's when level. That's the level. It's like you literally just made up the show. And it's like, yes, I did. I made up the show and it did not deliver.
Yeah.
I guess this is a good last question. Unfortunately, Shichiro Kobayashi, I'm sorry if I butchered his name. He unfortunately just passed away recently, and he's one of the best like art directors I think I've seen in anime. I think he's also a very good example of a creator whose like work you have seen, even if you don't know he's responsible for it. So for our listeners and everyone, he's done the background art for, or just overall art direction for Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro, Utena, the main series and the film. And most recently that I've seen, most recently for my viewing, Angel's Egg. So like a lot of very big films out there. He also did Berserk 97. So
nice.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I haven't experienced any of him. And then you said Berserk 97.
There we go. Okay. There it is. So I think like his work, even if like you haven't seen it personally from watching one of those, like you've definitely seen the style somewhere. But so did you have any kind of like thoughts on him besides like, oh, he's good, or like anything, just any cool takeaways?
Yeah, totally. Like Kobayashi is definitely one of those artists that, as you said, like he's almost everywhere in the sense that like you've watched a show with him on it. And I think that also says a lot about the fact that he's one of those artists that his art direction is so good to the point to which it kind of becomes part of the general experience. It's not something that it's like, oh, just that one background. No, he creates environments, not just backgrounds. And like that's honestly how I felt when I watched a show like Windy Tales, for example. Like that show's one of my favorite shows, really like authentic slice of life anime. And I think what's so beautiful about like the background art on that and what I experienced from that is just how authentic it feels to like real life. It doesn't try to hide the fact that it's drawn, and this is something that he came up with and put together with his own pencil. It's very obvious, and that's what makes that show so beautiful and brings out what's so nice about that show, because of the fact that essentially the message of it is how nothing lasts forever and everything is slightly imperfect, and we need to really embrace the imperfect moments in life and not just the perfect picturesque ones. And I think like Kobayashi's background art on that one really brings that out, and it's maybe the highlight of the show alongside some other things. And generally, I just think it's a real like shame that we've lost like yet another like great person in the anime industry. Like I've watched some other things with him on like as you said, Angel's Egg, but also like Aim of Base 1979, also another like really great, that 70s movie that I'm really fond of. Overall just really big loss for like the industry as a whole, and like I'm just so happy he had like such a like massive legacy on like kind of how we understand background art as a whole, and so quite upset about that, honestly.
I think it's definitely very sad to see, as you said, like another talent loss. I'm glad that the only positive is I've seen a lot of people talking about him and his work, and I've seen people mention Windy Tales a lot. So I'm definitely going to check that one out. So I'm glad that there's kind of such tragedy has led to an opportunity to appreciate more of his works. So,
Yeah.
you know, small.
Did he do anything recent? Were any of those recent? Because those sounded like they were more like 90s, early 2000s.
I think he did one show called Simone that it was in like the mid 2000s that I think might be his most recent. He probably has other recent ones that I'm not familiar with, but I remember. Yeah.
I wanted to know if there was anything else I recognized, but from only seeing Berserk 97, I mean, like that show, in terms of what you were talking about, Jamal, like that show really, they did a lot with very little. So like the backgrounds themselves captured so much atmosphere, so much of a mood, like that really did a lot for that adaptation.
And it's so tough when it's Berserk that has the manga has such a strong visual identity as it is. It's kind of like, how do you adapt that? And then how do you also like give that your own personal style to it? And I think he melds the two like really well.
Yeah, he did do a few like things a bit later towards like the early 2000s, like Nadam Cantaval and I think it was Aihana as well, and like Monogatari. He's done a few things, but like I think when most people are aware of like his most iconic works was like pre-2000. But I think that says a lot about him as a creator in the sense that people remember him and his legacy that deep into anime, whereas like there are so many creators who like, I don't say they're almost lost in that period. I don't mean to like make it like competition, but like people still talk about him. He is still like the guy for background to this day, and I think that says like so much about like how powerful he is as a creator, and will continue to be, honestly, because I don't really see anything quite like it. I don't think we ever will see anything quite like it ever again.
Yeah, well said. Now I'm regretting wearing a slightly green shirt that I could not show off the angel's egg background I had at the beginning of the podcast. But
you can't do anything with like a slight bit of green, or even if it's a blue that leans towards green. So that's the tricky part.
just make it the background anyway, and then just like fade into the background.
Just be it. Just embrace
it. It's like the Homer Simpson meme where he's like fading into the bush.
Yeah.
I will just fade into angel's egg.
I think that's your idiosyncrasy. You got to do it.
It's my calling, becoming the angel's egg.
Actually, one last question for Jamal. Actually, maybe last two, but this one was, what do you value in terms of the craft the most in anime? Like, which part do you value the most, personally?
I think what recently I've been leaning very much into, like, I appreciate like direction and cinematography probably the most as of now. Like that is always shifting just based on interest, because like there'll be some moments where like, I'll be really into like movement and certain people, and I'll be watching everything from that certain person who has like one cut or on the show. But like I think as of now because I think I don't see that there are limits as to exploring movement, because that like everyone's unique in how they animate things. But I think I've kind of gone to the point to which like, I love looking at movement, but I also, you have to think a lot about how the movement is staged, and that's where I think direction comes in, because I think I don't want to say it's like the next level, but I think it takes much more to think about, because you have how something moves, but where is the thing moving, for example, or how exactly is that movement put together in reference to like the framing of it and stuff like that. So I've been really like in the weeds. We've said that like so many times this podcast. In the weeds with like
in the weeds podcast.
I've been really deep into like direction and I guess storyboarding. I kind of put those in the same like bucket really. Mostly those two things were I've been like most interested on, but like I'm kind of just interested in the general thing. I'd like to be more interested in stuff like sound and voice acting, but that's something that like I think takes a lot more like work and study to get into, because you have to study stuff like music theory, and I didn't play an instrument, so that's like a lot to learn. But like eventually those things, and also just the amount of resources on like sound design in anime, at least like of specific sound designers, is very minimal as of now, from what I understand. And so that would take like a bit of work and time, but yeah, like I wouldn't be interested in it all, but like at the moment, like direction is kind of like where I'm at the moment, like cinematography.
Yeah. And actually, on that note about doing studies and studying that part of it, up until now, like you've become like so knowledgeable about all this stuff. Has it really just been through mainly just observation, kind of researching the staff and just paying careful attention? Maybe a mix of conversations. Has it just been pretty much that, or did you already have like maybe some background in just analyzing films or discourse or anything like that?
I'd say I'm kind of fresh out the gate. Like I have studied at least, you know, in school, like you do stuff like media studies, stuff like that. So like I did have a bit of that, but that kind of came a bit afterwards. And I don't know how much that taught me to like analyze a movie per se, but I think it is mostly through like observation and a bit of like I guess also just seeing other people's commentary on some things also gets you interested as well, because it's like, oh, I never thought about this perspective. Let me watch this thing for myself, and then you form your own.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it was a lot of that, and also a lot of, I guess, just yeah, just watching loads of stuff and just getting like interested in loads of stuff. Sometimes maybe that comes with the downside of like watching something that's actually just really boring. But yeah, like it kind of paid off, I guess, and is like continuing to pay off. I hope like eventually is like, you know, just kind of explore what anime has to offer. I'll eventually like get to, you know, just watching black and white like anime.
Yeah.
But for now, yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at, just watching stuff where and when I can.
Yeah, I had a bit of that this summer. I had like but for film, I had like a film kick where I just like went back through like old like classic
Yeah.
films, and I was like watching through some of them just to understand like cultural impact or pick up on things. But there was one point where I caught myself thinking like, okay, this is very boring. Like, watching this.
Yeah, sometimes you reach just like you then just reach that one thing. It's like, okay, let me go back to the modern stuff now, because like this is just getting like a bit too much for me. Yeah, like there's sometimes where I get into like an OVA kick where I'll just be watching like 6 episode shows from like the 90s or whatever, and like I watch like, I know, 5 of them in a row, and then eventually there'll be one that just like I feel like I have to really drag my heels to get through it. Then I'm just like, okay, like I've done enough 90s for today. Like I'm just gonna go back to like my usual like seasonal grind, just like leave it at that.
It's like, it seems like both the best and worst of both worlds, where it's like you got the seasonal grind and then you have the
Yeah.
80s OVA grind, and one will help you appreciate the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'll have to get some recommendation on some 80s OVAs, because I think that's like that's another step in the pipeline. Is like you got to go back to some 80s OVAs to see what they were cooking back then.
I
Yeah.
definitely would love to do like a series or something where we just go through the decades. You know, like that'd just be cool. Like
Yeah,
the
that'd be
highlights of
sick.
like Shaw's just like, no, we can't go that far.
No, I would
Not
love that.
deep. We, like tackle the 70s, finish the 70s, go to the 80s, and just like, I don't know, not everything, but just like the highlights, and like kind of just see the like identify the cultural impacts of like each decade. That'd be cool. Cause like I feel like one of the things that's lacking, and I think this goes back to a point that Jamal was saying earlier, that like there's a lot of focus on writing for media, like the writing part of it. So online, there's like a lot of easily accessible resources, you know, that are databases that kind of give examples and stuff, but it's always focused on the writing. You know, there's never really like as accessible sources for stuff that gives you examples about like the visual side of it or stuff like that you kind of have to like search out for yourself. So unless there is, and I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, like I guess like the usual like Psychoburo, I guess AnyDB as well. Like they do help, but I do agree that like those things are still pretty niche, in the sense that most people aren't. Most people, I don't think, are like combing through staff databases to like see who directed XYZ episode and kind of like make connections and form patterns. But I think things are changing, but it's still going to take a bit of a while. And even though like the resources exist, I don't think that really gets people into like really analyzing per se, because like, yeah, you can comb through a database, but that's not really going to teach you how to engage with their work very much. It's the first step, I'd say, but I think engaging on that level is much more foundational, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's too late, but I think it's something much more deep rooted in just how people view art as a whole, as opposed to like it being just like an anime thing for now.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
We did the fake
Ooh.
out before of like we
Yeah.
might end it, and then we had 20 more minutes of things to talk about.
it.
So I'm sorry if we faked everyone out, including you, Jamal. I'm sorry for the fake out, but it was great to have you. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention or say in general?
Not really. Besides, I'm just I don't know if I can like I don't know if I can substantiate, but like I was gonna say I'm like the number one Just Weebs fan, but but
Yay.
yeah, I'm just happy to be here. It's been like a really fun, like chill conversation.
Actually,
really
you
enjoyed
can
this.
substantiate it because you are on the pod.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
People that
am.
want to argue, you have to come on.
Yeah.
Fight me on the hot takes episode. Like I am the number one Just Weebs fan.
That would be a fun time. Well, we are a huge Jamal. Well, I was gonna say Jamal fan, but like we are a fan of you, but it's like it's not we are a huge GetIntheMecha fan, but fan of both. So.
Ooh. Oh no, my camera went out of focus. Sorry.
The hot takes got too hot, but
we're almost done, so you only need to hold out for like 2 more minutes.
Yeah. But essentially, we're a big fan of you. I hope that I'm sure we have similar watchers and viewers, like, and listeners. So like, but if they have not, if for some reason they have not heard of you, where is the best way to find you and like consume your content?
You can find me on pretty much like you can just Google me basically, or like just Google GetIntheMecha, or like on any audio like podcast platform, just search GetIntheMecha, and you should find it just fine. If you also go into YouTube as well, for video podcasts, you can check that out at just youtube.com/GetIntheMecha, or just search GetIntheMecha. That's one word on YouTube. I don't know why I did that, but yeah. And then and then for social media, I'm quite simple. I just use one site. So you can check me out on Twitter. That's again GetIntheMecha, or one word. And I just post stuff and writing and videos. So just check me out if you do like enjoy this sort of stuff in like a slightly more like, I guess, compressed format. Yeah.
Well, I am going to keep showing your stuff because I genuinely see so many people who I think want to engage in like this depth of content, like this depth of knowledge. And I think they're frustrated because they don't see it as much, but I'm going to let them know, like, this is like a great resource to engage with and think of. And like, this is just like where I think they want to be. So thank you. So thank you for doing what you do. And thanks for coming on. This was a great time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I've had a really good time.
Yay, I'm glad to hear it.
Really exciting too that your content is like kind of continually evolving. You're like morphing, now into like the video side of it, and now with examples. Because I checked out like an older episode which was just audio. Now it's like you on the camera and
the Stone Age.
So I feel like you're kind of exploring new avenues and trying to better the podcast. So that's really cool, and it makes it more interactive. So that's I'm looking forward to more of what you put out. So like Josh said, thank you for coming on. Links to where to see Jamal is in the description as well. And
you'll have to have you back on for a future episode, either maybe if we get through the anime decades, or just another hot take pod to fight to the death.
I have to fight like all the YouTubers. That's gonna be like a difficult task.
Yeah, or if we get into something like very like rabbit hole, like into the weeds, join us.
Or March comes in like a line.
That'll be fun. I have to rewatch actually. Yeah.
We have the perfect cast of like you, Onimaru. I guess I'm not really like a factor in this, but then we bring on Tay, the one with the bad March comes in like a lion take, and then we have a true meeting of the minds to discuss March comes in like a lion.
The March comes in like a lion summit.
Yes.
But yeah, that's all we got for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. As always, like the episode if you liked it, if you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
let
like
us
it,
know.
please.
Yeah, please.
If you don't like it, just like it anyway.
Yeah,
We
just
can't-
like
Yeah.
it. We can't see the dislike button, so it doesn't matter. And if you have any comments, questions, for Jamal, for us about the episode, any suggestions or things you want to see in the future, let us know in the comments below. And besides that, if you haven't subscribed already, but you listen and you watch and you just haven't subscribed for some reason, just subscribe. Just help us out, besides that, we are not anime experts. Everything we said on this pod is sort of just based on observation and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, we are really just weebs. So that's it. We will catch you
Ooh.
guys next week. Next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
See you guys next week.
Next-